Confirmation bias. Your mind already knows what it believes. Before you read the article, before you hear the argument, before you look at the data, a quiet conclusion is already sitting there, waiting to be confirmed. You search for the information that agrees with you. You linger on the headlines that match your view. And you feel a satisfying sense of clarity when the world seems to line up with what you already thought. It feels like good judgment, like you've figured something out, like your instincts have been proven right.
Here's what's actually happening inside your brain. When you encounter information that agrees with your existing beliefs, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine, the same reward chemical involved in pleasure and motivation. Agreement feels good at a neurological level. Disagreement, on the other hand, activates your brain's threat detection system, the same circuitry that handles fear and danger. Your mind doesn't treat a contradicting fact as new information, it treats it as a threat to be neutralized. The shift happens quietly. You stop noticing the evidence that doesn't fit, not because you're dishonest, but because your brain filters it out before it ever reaches conscious attention. You seek out people who think like you. You interpret ambiguous facts in the direction of your existing view. You remember the times you were right and forget the times you weren't. Every new piece of confirming evidence makes the belief feel more certain, more settled, more obviously true. Before long, your worldview has become a closed loop. New information only enters if it agrees to stay in its assigned role. You become harder to reach, not through stubbornness, but through a system your brain built to protect you from the discomfort of being wrong. Your confidence grows while your accuracy quietly shrinks. That settled feeling isn't wisdom. It's a door your brain locked from the inside.
The Dunning-Kruger effect. Early success feels extraordinary. You take your first lesson, finish your first project, read your first book on the subject, and suddenly the complexity of it seems manageable. You understand the basics, you can talk about it, you see how things connect. Confidence arrives fast, almost instantly. You feel like you've grasped something real, something others probably haven't noticed. That first wave of competence is intoxicating. Here's what's happening beneath the surface. Your brain builds knowledge in layers. In the beginning, you don't yet know what you don't know. You can see the visible surface of a subject, but not the depth beneath it. And because you can't see the depth, you assume the surface is most of it. This is not a flaw in intelligence. It's a predictable consequence of having limited information about your own limited information. You're measuring your knowledge against a map that isn't finished yet. The tipping point arrives without warning. As you learn more, the picture gets more complicated, not simpler. The things you thought were settled start opening into new questions. You realize how much the experts know that you don't. And for the first time, your confidence drops, sometimes sharply. This is the valley where genuine understanding begins. But most people don't realize they were on the peak before they fell. They just remember feeling certain and now feeling lost. The trap closes on both ends. The beginner mistakes confidence for competence and stops learning too soon. The expert underestimates their own knowledge because they can see how much remains unknown. You can spend years inside a subject and still feel less certain than you did in your first week. That discomfort isn't ignorance. It's the shape that real knowledge takes. The people most sure they've figured it out are usually the ones who haven't started yet. The sunk cost fallacy. You've already invested too much to stop. The money is spent, the hours are gone, the energy has been poured in. Stopping now would mean all of that was for nothing. So you keep going. You stay in the job that's making you miserable. You've finished the degree you stopped caring about 2 years ago. You sit through the rest of a movie you stopped enjoying 40 minutes in. Quitting feels like failure. Continuing feels like honoring what you've already given. Here's the psychology driving that feeling. Your brain is wired to experience losses more intensely than equivalent gains. Losing something already invested feels worse than gaining the same amount feels good. This is called loss aversion, and it pulls hard. When you've put time, money, or effort into something, walking away doesn't just feel like stopping. It feels like losing everything you've already given. The brain registers it as damage, as something being taken from you, even when the rational choice is to cut your losses.
The pattern embeds itself gradually. You make a slightly bad decision, you invest a little more to protect it, you're now deeper in, and the cost of leaving grows. Each new investment makes the exit more expensive emotionally. You stop asking whether this is worth continuing and start asking how you can justify having started. The question shifts from "where am I going" to "what does it say about me if I quit now?" What was already spent is gone, whether you stop or continue. That's the fact your brain won't fully accept. The sunk cost has no vote in what you should do next, but it casts one anyway, quietly, every time you consider leaving. You keep paying for something that stopped being worth it long ago, not because it makes sense, but because your brain has confused honoring the past with protecting your future. Availability bias. The thing you can picture most vividly feels like the most likely thing. Plane crashes, kidnappings, shark attacks. Your brain retrieves these images instantly, and that ease of retrieval gets mistaken for probability. You feel afraid of things that are statistically rare and comfortable with things that quietly kill far more people. You make decisions about risk, safety, and danger based not on numbers, but on the last vivid story you encountered.
Here's what creates that effect. Your brain estimates probability by asking how easily an example comes to mind. If something is dramatic, recent, emotional, or heavily covered in the news, it becomes mentally available, easy to retrieve, quick to surface. And that fluency gets interpreted as frequency. Your brain uses retrieval speed as a proxy for how common something is. It's an efficient shortcut that works reasonably well in a natural environment. In a world of 24-hour news and social media, it gets weaponized. The dependency builds without announcement. You start shaping your choices around the risks you've recently seen described, not the risks that are statistically most threatening. Fear migrates toward the dramatic and away from the mundane. The quiet dangers, the ones with no story attached, go unnoticed. Meanwhile, you over-insure against lightning and underestimate the things happening slowly in your own habits and routines. Your risk map has been drawn by what was easiest to recall, not by what was most true. Every disturbing headline nudges the map in a new direction. Every viral story rewrites what feels dangerous. The news doesn't have to lie to distort your perception of reality. It only has to be vivid enough, often enough, to reshape what your brain treats as probable. You're navigating the world with a compass calibrated by whoever told the most memorable story. Negativity bias. Bad experiences stick harder and longer than good ones. You receive 9 compliments and 1 criticism, and you replay the criticism all evening. You have a good week at work and 1 difficult conversation with someone you care about, and the conversation is what follows you home. Your brain assigns more weight, more attention, and more memory space to the negative, not because you're pessimistic, because you were designed this way. Here's the evolutionary logic behind it. Your ancestors needed to remember threats more precisely than they remembered pleasures. Forgetting where good fruit grew was a setback. Forgetting where the predator lived was a catastrophe. Brains that weighted danger heavily survived. Brains that didn't were removed from the gene pool. Your nervous system is running on hardware built for a world that no longer exists, where the cost of missing a threat was death and the cost of missing a reward was merely hunger. The takeover happens gradually. You start organizing your interpretation of events around the worst parts. A good day with 1 bad moment gets remembered as a bad day. A relationship with many warm moments gets defined by its harshest one. Your brain actively seeks out what went wrong, not out of masochism, but out of an ancient drive to identify threats before they escalate. The problem is that it doesn't distinguish between a social slight and a predator. Both get the same level of attention.